Do you ever get the feeling that the government loves criminals? Not that they just tolerate them, but that they actively want there to be more sex offenders, more violent offenders, more thieves in society. This is the impression I get a lot lately. And if you go online, you can find any number of stories where murderers and rapists and thieves are let off with fairly light sentences or none at all. While at the same time, their victims and the victims' families and small businesses who are affected are given very little recourse or none at all. Or even worse, they're actively punished for trying to defend themselves or their property against criminals because the police can't or is unwilling to help them. The most recent example of this would be California, where shoplifting has been reduced to something of a misdemeanor, while at the same time business owners that try to stop thieves and defend their property are given something like an $18,000 or $19,000 fine. And all of this begs the question as to why the government would prioritize criminals over their own lawful citizens. And I don't think it's not that the government is unable to deal with crime. For example, Bukele has managed to completely turn around El Salvador in a couple years, just by rounding up the cartels and the gang members, despite it being a third world country. But on our end, our only response from Western journalists and Amnesty International has been to cry about these absolute savages being robbed of their human rights without much thought given to the communities or families that these people destroy. And if you've seen any videos of the cartel in action, it's pretty brutal. It's not something I'd recommend watching. So it's not that the government is unable to stop crime. It's that they don't want to, because this kind of criminal, at least, isn't really a threat to them. And if you think about it, just what sorts of things do modern democratic countries want? They want more money via taxation or the creation of debt, more resources going to social and environmental programs they deem to be, good for humanity, more surveillance and control over the population in order to implement these aforementioned plans, and less oversight from, uneducated rednecks, that is, normal people who can't seem to get with the program, and less opportunity for, people to leave their system for elsewhere. So the criminals in question, I don't think are in any way a threat to any of these wants that the government has. I mean, you being robbed or assaulted doesn't really threaten their ability to tax you or to create new debt or to push new causes onto you or more programs. I mean, if anything, it just gives them an excuse to push for more programs that solve or claim to solve the problems they create. So if anything, criminals are more a friend to government. I mean, just take shoplifting. The existence of tens of thousands of independent small businesses where anyone can shop anonymously and buy things with cash isn't really something the government would want. It's not really in their best interests. But if the state, for example, were to allow retail to be destroyed by looting and shoplifting, this makes way for, companies like Amazon to take even more control and to gain even more market share. And a big monolith like Amazon or Google is much easier for the government to control relative to thousands upon thousands of independent small businesses especially given the fact that at Amazon, all purchases are tracked and you can't pay in cash, which, you know, is a dream come true to the government. At least modern governments that we're currently dealing with. So the true enemy of the state isn't criminals, it's small business owners. And more generally, it's people like you, ordinary, rational people who push for greater oversight, you know, less taxation, less destruction of your wealth via inflation and then deflation. You, more than anything, are the biggest threat to them. And in this sense, the government, or criminals, serve an important purpose to the government. They keep you occupied and distracted from holding the government accountable. Since if you're too busy worried about, you know, being assaulted on the street or just trying to feed yourself, and afford groceries, or if small businesses are just trying to keep their head above water and dealing with thieves and shoplifting, none of you are going to have much time to devote to protesting government overreach or leaving for somewhere better. And obviously the government will rationalize their actions. They'll say, you know, things like violent resistance isn't the way to stop crime. Understanding and rehabilitation are what matter. And it's just due to, you know, poverty and lack of opportunity. And if you give people opportunities, crime will just, you know, evaporate. And this may or may not be debatable, but the basic truth remains that government-sanctioned crime serves to keep you in line, because ordinary law-abiding citizens and not criminals are the biggest threat to government, because it's you that is the one that can and wants to hold them accountable.